Hey everyone, Stegar here, and welcome back to Hunterville. In today's episode, we're going to be working across the road from the train station that we placed down in the last episode, and we'll be working on some taller buildings in the main downtown area. And so I'm starting off here by just placing down a few buildings. These ones are somewhat on the shorter side of what we're going to build today, because we're going to have like some 20-something story buildings in some parts of this build. And I imagine that this area is kind of left over from a long time ago, like say the early 1900s or something, when they're still building relatively short buildings in the downtown, and hasn't really been developed into much more except for on the corner there on the main road and this building, which are much more recent additions to the area. And as we kind of approach the central square, which is kind of behind where the camera is now, the buildings will slowly be getting taller, more or less. Like this building that I just placed down is about maybe 10-15 stories or something, and I'm just creating like a little kind of outdoor cafe or something. I think that thing that I just placed down here is called the icebox or something, and I'm just placing some tables around it, just trying to fill in this space with something that kind of makes sense that it could be there. Like I could have put like some little shrubs or something there, but I chose to make it into like a little eatery or something. And here is my first ever attempt at doing an underground parking lot entrance. And I just pulled up that like rusty car before to try and gauge an idea of what height the road should be at the bottom. And here I'm just putting some concrete walls around it to address the height difference that it's creating. And just moving them into place because it was easier to do them off to the side and then just try and kind of move them with Move It to get them into place, rather than doing that all in here where there's also like quite a bit going on with networks and things, and it just becomes hard to try and move things and place things when you got like 10 other things going on in the same place. And in some of the other parts of this build and the other episodes that I've recorded so far, I also came into a lot of trouble of having way too much going on in a small area, and it kind of shows sometimes where there's just like things snapping to weird places. I think coming up soon you'll see that I end up putting some bushes off like onto this road here, because they just wouldn't really fit on top of the like here the bushes that I placed in these planters were kind of snapping to the ground, snapping to the top of the wall and like that, and I just put them on the ground here and moved them into place because I found it a lot easier than trying to make it all work out, because it was just becoming a mess because there's so much going on. Anyway, I'm also putting some benches around here to just try and fill in the space, and maybe people could come out here if they wanted some fresh air. It's probably not the best place to spend your free time when you've got time, like when you're on your lunch break from work, but it's somewhere, and I'm just putting in a few bushes in front of this building to also kind of fill in that space, because otherwise it looks really bare around here. And I'm just using these bushes by Padelmo. They're kind of large bushes, but they're called bushes and not trees, so I call them bushes too, but technically they are trees. And just adding some more like 10-story buildings or something. I've actually been meaning to talk about the way that I search for buildings in this. What I've done, and it was quite tedious to do, and I'm constantly doing this as I'm adding more buildings, is to categorize them by the number of floors they have, or some I had to estimate because the scale of some buildings, even the vanilla ones, is really off, so I kind of had to use some buildings as a guide and then just tag the other buildings and find it using those as like 20 stories or 30 stories or something. I think I have like 5 or 6 options or something. I've got like a 1-story option that basically covers all the buildings from 1 to 4 stories, and then a 5-story option that covers 5 to 10, 10 covers 10 to 19 and so on and so forth, and like groups of 10 stories as things increased. And as much as it sounds tedious, I think it's really helped in terms of like making the building process a lot more efficient, because I can just pick like, oh, I want a 10-story building here, or a 5-story building here, or one-story building, and basically just pick that height, and then just pick like a whole lot of buildings within that same group and place them all down really quickly. Again, it was like I had to go through a lot and do that, and I've also been doing that with time periods, just trying to estimate it, because I'm not like exactly familiar with like when old architecture was around. I did a little bit of research, but there was only so much that I could do, and also like trying to use information on the workshop, or if the building is based off a real life one, then doing a Wikipedia search or something and trying to work things out to get things as accurate as possible. And I also have like 5 or 6 options for this, from like 1800, which covers basically every old looking building, to 1900, 1930s is like Art Deco and some older looking office buildings and things, 1950s, which is a lot of kind of brutalist concrete architecture, and 1970s with a bit of that, and starting to get into more modernist buildings with a whole lot of glass, and then 2000s that just look really modern, sorry. And yeah, here I was just over by this old market hall. I was putting in some benches and things, and putting in these really modern looking buildings to fill in the space. I think I had to convert these to procedural objects at some point after this episode, because they weren't connected to the road and they're complaining about it. And later on, I don't think I've put in any death care or garbage at this point, but later on it would have caused trouble with the pathfinding for those services, as if your buildings aren't connected to roads, they get to a point where they're like, oh, I need to go get the garbage from this building next, and it can't make a route, so it just decides to recalculate that route and constantly do it, and basically kills your whole garbage and death care collection, because they can't find a route to one specific building, which is a real problem. I think I also had this problem in my last series of Fairview a few times, and had to do a similar thing. Or if the buildings were, say, like a police station or a unique building, you could just disable them, whereas with residential buildings and things that don't really have any expenses, you can't just disable them like that. So procedural objects is the way to go in that situation. And here I was building my second construction site that I've attempted, because I attempted one in the last episode of Fairview, and yeah, it was the last one, and basically that was me experimenting. I think I watched like a YouTube video. I can't remember who it was from. I really can't remember who it was from at that time, but it gave me some ideas of my own. And this was a lot different to that one that I built in Fairview, because the one I built in Fairview was like the very start of construction, in like 1 story or half a story or something. Whereas here I've decided to try things out differently, and basically cover the ground in the gravel texture and put dirt decals over top of it, and place down these prefab like concrete slabs around it. And at the moment you'll see like a construction office over the back of the site, but I removed that later because I didn't really think that'd be a great place to put things, and was basically just trying things out here because I wasn't really sure how I wanted things to look at first. But I decided for this general floor layout, and just going around with these prefab things and putting this different one in the middle, and using this one as a doorway entrance thing. This building probably actually needs more, because it doesn't make sense to have like one doorway for what ends up currently being like 5 or 6 stories. And obviously it could have more. I'm not really sure at which stage in construction it is, but I placed down a crane in a minute's time. I went through and did like all of the interior stuff It probably isn't needed because it'd be really hard to see unless you got on like very specific camera angle and maybe messed around with the field of view a bit to get things to like look through all the windows, but I decided to do it all here anyway, and once I've finished doing this wall, I cover up this bit. I thought I was going to copy the floor, but I'm not at the moment. And now I am, but yeah, over there is just covering up the parking lots with some like piles of scrap or something, and those few skip bins that you saw me place down. I'm not really sure how accessible that part is, but there's like a little alleyway over the back that maybe you could get like some wheelbarrows or something in. And yeah, here I'm just copying these floors down. I can't remember if it's like 4 or 8 stories. I know it's an even number because I was just copying a whole lot of stuff. But I was just getting the, or maybe I left it at 4. It seems I left it at 4. But also disabling this stuff with Traffic Manager because I wanted to put a crane out on the road. And this was me first placing it down, and then in maybe like a minute or half a minute's time, I'm not sure how much, but I ended up moving this around because when I first placed it down I didn't see those wheels there the way they were facing, and decided to kind of rotate it around. And I'm just putting these fences here for like safety reasons so that people don't walk in. I wanted to keep that side of the pavement open because the other side is sort of blocked off, so you still need to provide accessibility for pedestrians to get through here. Otherwise it'd cause a whole lot of problems for businesses down the street, as if there isn't already probably a problem because of construction. I know that in Auckland at the moment they're creating a rail tunnel and it basically goes under a street, and because of that they've had to cut off that street, and all the businesses are really unhappy about it. And here I was just getting back to the game, that is, just placing down some decals and kind of making the ground look really worn by all the trucks coming in and obviously this crane moving around, and placing some scaffolding along the side too so that, you know, people can access the building. I was kind of coming up with these ideas on the fly, just as I went, just adding the scaffolding. Like at first I wasn't going to add any, and then I decided to add some. It's not around the whole place, but just in some places so there is some accessibility. And just with like this episode in general, I was just really trying to push myself to create new things, because now that I'm working in a big city, I do have a lot more opportunities than I do in Fairview to work on a few different things, because obviously Fairview is a small town and it maybe doesn't really require underground parking lots and things, whereas here in a large city that's just kind of one of those things that you can expect to come across in a big city. And here I was just placing down this hotel and using these doorways, the roller doors at the back, and just using the parking lot road to try and make it look as though there was an actual entrance to this, and just placing some more parking spaces down to fill in the rest of that bit because it is there and I needed to use it, and also just like adding another node so that I could get the street lamps in the right place. Also with this episode, if you watch the teaser of it, the like opening shot is kind of looking up at most of the buildings that we built in this episode, and I really kind of like that. In the second shot of that, I think it's the second shot, it shows a construction site that I built in like 2 or 3 episodes time or something, and it was just another construction site idea. You should go check out that video after this one if you haven't already. And here I was just doing like a little outdoor seating because there's a Starbucks on the side of that hotel, so I thought that's a good opportunity to extend the seating that came on the side of that building. And I was also trying to get the decals to just be on the very edge so that there's no I think it's called sea fighting, where the like textures are some show up and then the others show up and it just starts flashing and looks really horrible. And here I just placed down the Skylines bank, I think it's called. You can't really see the signage on it now because it's at the top of the building and I've kind of been looking down at the ground for a while. But I think that's like the tallest or second tallest building in the city right now. And also just adding some other buildings around it and making a little kind of pavement road rather than asphalt road in between that other building that has like a little carport thing. And I also changed the colour of that now brown building. It was like a weird green colour that didn't really make any sense for the way that that building looked, because to me it looked kind of old. And just putting in some bushes and things. And next episode we are going to be continuing on the downtown area and adding some more buildings around here. And then I will leave the kind of downtown high-rise stuff for a while. I don't know when I'll come back to it, but my plan is to kind of work on the downtown in stages and break things up, because otherwise I'll work on the downtown and then all I've really got left to do is suburbs and industry and maybe a few farms or something out in the countryside if I ever get around to that. Because I don't really want to do it that way, because otherwise it's just going to end up getting really boring, both for me to build and I'll get burnt out, and also for you guys, of course, because you don't particularly want to watch me do the same thing for like 20 episodes in a row. Anyways, we're at the end of the time lapse that just finished, so if you've enjoyed this video, leave a like, and I'd really appreciate it if you guys could share this video with people, because I have actually been putting quite a bit of effort into this series. You might not be able to tell, but I do spend like 3 hours on these videos just getting the building stuff. And also subscribe to my channel if you're new here, that'd really help me too. And I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.